A recurring theme. Yeah. All right. I see most people have come back. So we have the second session for the morning, which will start now and last until 1. And this session is about the business case for SDMX and the initiatives that are in place to review it and update it in light of the evolution of the standard and of its usage in the community. This session is chaired by Abdulla and has one presenter, which is Abdulla. So I leave it to Abdulla then.
Yeah, thanks, Luca. Thankfully, I've already been here, so I don't have to introduce myself. I've already been introduced. So we're going to talk about the business case for this session, and the way we'll do it is we'll have a presentation, then we'll have a discussion, then we'll have Slido questions, and then we'll discuss the results, and we'll have a further discussion about that. So that's the plan. Okay? So let's talk about the SDMX business case review. And the first question is, why are we talking about the SDMX business case? And the reason for that is that in the last couple of years, the SDMX Secretariat has run a review of the SDMX governance. And one of the main conclusions of the task force was that the business case urgently need to be reviewed. And therefore, Business Case Review Task Force was recently authorized by the SDMX sponsors. And that's why we are discussing the business case now. But before we go on to discuss the SDMX business case, let's talk about what a business case is in the first place. So what is it? So one definition is a business case provides justification for undertaking a project, program, or portfolio. Right? So in a way, it provides the rationale for an initiative. Business case can refer to a commercial enterprise. Business cases are created when a corporation wants to embark on a new project, or a private company, or a government, or an international initiative such as SDMX. And questions which are commonly looked at in a business case include, why do we need change? Why are we not happy with what we have already? What are we trying to achieve? Right? Who are the stakeholders? Who is going to be involved in this initiative? What are the costs and benefits? What are you going to invest and what return are you going to get? What are the risks if the whole thing doesn't work out the way we expect? And what are the alternatives? So this is not an exhaustive list, and not all business case documents try to answer all of these questions, but these are some of the questions that you commonly find in a business case. The business case for SDMX was published at the height of the global pandemic in July 2020. It had been in preparation for a couple of years. This was led by the IMF, then chair of the SDMX Secretariat, And honestly, it's a huge achievement, really. Before that, there was no single document that could explain what SDMX is, why you need this, why you need to pursue it in the first place, what are the strategic objectives. There was nothing. And then finally in 2020, we had the SDMX business case. Again, great achievement, and it was led by the IMF. It was developed by the SDMX Secretariat, led by the IMF. So the SDMX business case, it talks about what SDMX is. It talks about the applications of SDMX, typical use cases for data and metadata exchange, and it lists the 7 benefits of SDMX, which are, I will mention them. SDMX inspires trust. SDMX improves coherence and comparability. SDMX supports modernization. SDMX improves timeliness and accessibility. SDMX reduces costs and reporting burden. SDMX removes barriers to implementation and data accessibility. And SDMX provides access to a global community of practitioners who can support you in your initiatives. So then the fair question is, if the business case for SDMX was published so recently, why update now? You know, it's a question that could be debated for a while, and I don't think that we have a clear, obvious answer to this. But basically, a lot has happened in the last few years. A lot has happened since 2010, and a lot has happened in connection with the pandemic, right? I think we don't appreciate, I mean, because aside from the obvious changes brought on by the pandemic, there are also subtle changes which we might not be aware of. But for example, our connectivity greatly improved, right? And it's not just about the way you communicate in the office, it's also the way you communicate out of the office. I think that the knowledge now flows much more freely between and among countries and international agencies. The communication has significantly improved. That's one reason, that's not the only reason, but we've seen a lot of change and incredible progress since 2020. We've seen countries signing up and implementing SDMX-based, various SDMX-based processes, dissemination, and we've seen that people started using SDMX in ways that even we didn't think about, right? And so when we looked at the business case more recently, what we found was that it does need much more attention to the needs of countries, to the needs of national governments. The benefits that and applications of SDMX for national governments and the value that the countries can get from SDMX. There needs to be much more coverage on dissemination because there was still too much focus on data exchange. I mean, exchange is in SDMX right there. It's the X in SDMX. That's the original purpose. But by far, that's not the only purpose. So there still need to be more coverage to other use cases, including dissemination. I think data and metadata management, it's something that wasn't even thought about in ways that this is carried out now. And it wasn't thought about how SDMX can help with that, but actually SDMX can make a lot of difference, and we'll talk about that a little later. In 2020, SDMX 3.0 didn't even exist. Microdata for SDMX didn't exist. Geospatial support did not exist. So obviously the business case does not cover those use cases, and they're very significant and very important. I mean, if we spend half a day on microdata during this experts workshop, that tells you that this is probably a fairly important topic, which at this time has no coverage in business case because it didn't exist 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Interoperability and harmonization. We'll talk about that a lot during this session. And it definitely needs a lot more coverage in the business case, especially about the value of interoperability and harmonization, because I think it might not be obvious to some people why you really need harmonization, why you really need interoperability, and especially why you need to spend your efforts and you need to spend your resources on that. What is the return from your investment into interoperability and harmonization? And of course, ChatGPT did not exist in 2020 either, nor StatGPT, nor all the other initiatives that we covered on Monday. So this also needed to be covered. SDMX was conceived in 2001. The first version was published in 2004, SDMX 1.0. SDMX 2.0 was published in September, I think, 2005. SDMX 2.1 in April 2011. SDMX 3.0 was published in 2021. The original idea was to reduce the reporting burden, to make it easier to reduce the costs of countries reporting to international statistical agencies. Why? It's because the countries were vocal and they complained about it at the UN Statistical Commission and other fora. Why do we have to complete 3 national accounts questionnaires, one for UNSD, another for the IMF, and the third for the World Bank? Why do we have to, and all these questionnaires, they're incompatible, they use different layouts, they use different codes, we have to keep staff, you know, our staff spend weeks or months just, you know, on reporting to the international organization. We need to improve the efficiency. So SDMX was born from there. That was the original use case. But I think that I wasn't so closely involved with SDMX at the very beginning. In 2004, 2005, I more or less started getting more closely involved in 2009 or 2010. So maybe old-timers in the room can correct me. But I think that it started as a data exchange initiative, but then pretty quickly, actually, people realized that, well, aside from data exchange, there are many, many other things that it could be used for. And the ideas that we are exploring right now, for example, SDMX for dissemination or data and metadata management, they're not very new. Already 15 or 17 years ago, already at that time, people knew about that. They foresaw those use cases. What I think they didn't foresee was that they were going to take so long to materialize. But now they have. And it's not just dissemination. It's dissemination per se, machine-to-machine communication, visualization, data and metadata management, and processing. As we saw, we had a whole session on VTL, right? And this is closely involved, and I hope that this will be even more closely integrated with SDMX. Yeah, and other use cases. However, what we found was that there is a very interesting and telling dichotomy between, let's say, the EU/OECD region and the rest of the world. In the EU region, here in Europe, SDMX is primarily used for data reporting, overwhelmingly, you might say, for the original purpose, data reporting to international organizations. But once you step out of the EU, I think it's, okay, I'd be cautious, but I would say that it is primarily used for dissemination and not reporting. Countries that implement .stat, including Thailand, Cambodia, those that are looking at it like Kyrgyzstan and others, they're not doing it to report data to the IMF or UNSD. They're doing it to create their own dissemination platforms. So there is this very interesting dichotomy or divide. But aside from being interesting, we also found that this is extremely harmful. Why? Is that we found that there is, in many, many cases, there is a very strong misperception in the EU that SDMX is for reporting to international agencies. This is what you need it for, period. And they wouldn't even be looking at, they wouldn't be considering the other use cases because they're not even aware of all these other strategic benefits that SDMX can bring. And by they, I mean senior management. We didn't realize that until now. I think it's become apparent in the last couple of years only. And again, by we, I mean the SDMX sponsors and other international organizations, and we have started making steps into changing that misperception. And while I'm at this subject, we'd be grateful if you did your own part. Talk to your senior managers. Encourage them to come to the global conference, because the SDMX Global Conference, next one will take place in 2025. It's not just for SDMX experts. This meeting is for SDMX experts. That's why it's called Experts Workshop. The global conference is for experts, yes, but also for management, including the senior management. So please encourage your bosses to come to next year's global conference. And they will find good company there. So the business case, it needs to address and needs to explain these new use cases and make the benefits clearer. Well, you may have heard that the Summit of the Future, the General Assembly session took place a couple of weeks ago in New York. And as part of this, one of the outcome documents was, again, it was the Global Digital Compact. It was included as an annex in the outcome document. And it contains a lot of things, but among other things, it contains this statement. They're not next to each other. They're in different parts of the documents. And there are tons of other references which I'm not quoting here. We commit by 2030 to promote the adoption of open standards and interoperability to facilitate the use of digital public goods across different platforms and systems. We commit to develop basic definitions and data classifications to promote interoperability and facilitate data exchanges. I don't know what about you, but this sounds like music to my ears, because this is what I've been trying to achieve for the last 15 years at least. There are a lot of other, this is not the only one. There are other global, regional, and national policy frameworks that point in the same direction. Facilitate interoperability, achieve it, great, data exchange, establish, compatibility, usability of the data, accessibility of the data. The problem is that they don't specify exactly how this needs to be done. And we need how this needs to be done, right? That's what brings us to this meeting in the first place. So, I am not aware of a better way of ensuring the interoperability of statistical data than SDMX. Maybe there is, I'm not aware of that. And therefore, it needs to be recognized. And it needs to be part of the business case. It needs to be one of the cornerstones of the business case, facilitating interoperability of statistical data and metadata. And another use case which is not covered in or sufficiently covered in business case, but which is coming up very strongly now, it's data and metadata management. The thing is that the really big topic is data governance. That comes up everywhere. That's again in the Global Digital Compact, in tons of other documents. But again, so you need to ensure data governance, but how do you achieve that? What are the tools? What are your options? And again, here it turns out that SDMX is there to help. It doesn't cover all of data governance, of course. There are some like privacy issues and others which are maybe yes, maybe not directly related to SDMX. But a large chunk of data governance is something where SDMX can help a lot. All our tools in structural metadata management or reference metadata management, the registry, the APIs, all of that, all of those tools available in support of data governance. And the countries recognize that. Thailand recognized it. And others recognize that. Again, it needs to be more deeply covered in the business case. And that is the final slide of the presentation. And in the first part of our discussion, we will try to answer this question. What are you using SDMX for? There's no breakout session. So I rely, I told you in the previous session, at the end we have to rely on your goodwill and cooperation. We don't have a stick, we only have a carrot. So please, I would really welcome your engagement. And I look forward to a productive discussion. Thank you. And let's move on. Let's move on to the discussion. This is the question: what are you using SDMX for? And reporting is there. I mean, if you are a European Union country, then I know that you're using SDMX for reporting. But if there are other use cases, including those not mentioned here, or if you are using SDMX in inventive, uncommon ways, then I would very much welcome, in any case, I would welcome, of course, your intervention, but particularly if there's something unusual that you'd like to talk about.
Okay, thank you. Maybe just I want to make a stupid comment, but SDMX stands for Statistical Data Meta Exchange. So when you present that name for new people, you cannot really blame them for not thinking about this is about exchanging data and metadata. Of course, when you start working with it, you understand that it's much more than that and what you can use it for. So maybe we need to start finding a new acronym for and replacing SDMX with something different. Because some would maybe reject this standard just because of the name and say, this we cannot use, we need something else. So yeah, that was just a kind of a stupid comment.
This is actually a very interesting point, but this is something I would like to say about this, because we had a similar discussion, and I think still ongoing discussion about UNSD. Because UNSD stands for United Nations Statistics Division, but recently UNSD acquired a whole new very important function on the integration of statistical and geospatial data. And there was a debate, ongoing debate, whether UNSD should be renamed. And there are 2 points of view. One is that yes, it definitely should be renamed and brought and the name and the acronym should be brought in line with new functions. And the others say that no, UNSD is a brand name, which is very well known, and we should keep the value of the brand. And what I find there is the example of UNICEF. Do you know what UNICEF, anybody knows what UNICEF stands for? Yes, Gedi? Yeah, but what exactly does UNICEF stand? What's the official name of UNICEF, in other words? Okay, I'll spare you the trouble. The official name of UNICEF is United Nations Children's Fund. So you might ask, why does it have such an interesting acronym? Well, it's because when the fund was established in the 1940s, it used to be called United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund. That was the official name. Then, I don't recall exactly when, maybe in 1990s, I don't recall now when, they changed their name. So the new name is United Nations Children Fund, but the acronym had a brand, was a brand. And they kept the acronym, they changed the name, but they kept the acronym. So, Ole, I think it's a very interesting idea, but we need to be mindful about the brand that SDMX already has.
Well, we don't, maybe we can find a way to keep the acronym even valid. I mean, you call it Standard for Data Metadata Excellence or something, and then everything is fine, huh?
Yes. That's exactly what I was talking about. But to be honest, I mean, I'm very grateful to Ole because I really wouldn't have expected that this proposal would bring a round of applause from the room. Clearly, there's an issue that that is recognized. Yes, Matt.
Maybe to go to the original question as well. I'm going to speak on behalf of some other people, right? Because I'm just a software developer, but I've had contact with many organizations over the years, and I have a few kind of points of what is SDMX used for from the context of outside of official statistics. So you saw Tom kind of presenting on day one, Tom Roberts from SmartX Data, and that was quite interesting because he contacted me a few years ago and said, I work for a private company, we're setting up an exchange of data to sort of commercialize data. And he came across SDMX and he was like, this is an incredible standard. He was just so overjoyed with the standard and said, this is like the best kept secret. Nobody knows about this. So he's actually going around and talking to people about it. So he's talking to a property company in the UK who are trying to manage their metadata and their data, and he's saying, use SDMX. And he puts people in, and they look at the website and they go, I don't really get it. Is this really for me? And he'll explain it to them and they'll go, oh, this is quite cool, actually. So SDMX is a really well-kept secret. And just another example, which is a completely different example, was the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors in the UK. So they came across SDMX and they said, this is incredible because you have this global registry with these very recognizable agencies at the top, IMF, OECD, BIS, World Bank. And he goes, we'd love to have our data and metadata shared in this kind of repository with all of these other agencies. And actually, their use case was heavily in the reference metadata side. Because they said, actually, a lot of what we collect is surveys on house, how construction is done. And that's what we sell. Because when you're constructing, say, a new hospital or a new school, you need to benchmark the price that you're being quoted amongst similar things that have been built. So they have a lot of kind of information which is reference metadata based, but they thought that was a really powerful part of the standard. In fact, they wanted to do all of their documentation using reference metadata. So these are two kind of alternative views of SDMX from outside the normal mean.
Well, alternative use is the internal way that we are making use of the information form, the information model of SDMX for interoperability and building taking it as a basis for the development of our transversal platform, but something that is this internal interoperability. I think, of course, the external is a given.
Yep. And just a couple of remarks in connection to both Matt and Juan. The governance, one of the recommendations of the governance review was to review the business case. Other recommendations included a review of communications and focus on interoperability. So it's actually great because we are finding, it's great to find vindication of our conclusions.
Excuse me, something additional, the governance indeed.
Yes.
The governance model followed by the standard pattern is something that we are.
Yes, we are aware of that, of course. But I think that what we find was that until we review the business case, until we clarify our mission and vision, we can't really go further. Because you know what, this is something which I've said many times over the years. Before we started that exercise on governance review, I used to think that mission statement and vision statement, that they were honestly like marketing gimmicks. You hire a consultant, you give him $200,000, and then a couple of weeks later, or maybe a couple of months later, he develops a mission statement for you, or a vision statement. That's what I used to think. Now I think that, no, I was completely wrong. Now I think that a mission statement and a vision statement are extremely important because without them, because they tell you what you are really trying to achieve. And whenever you undertake a project or something else, you can look at the vision statement. Is this really, does it help me get there? It's very important to have that. And we will develop that, by the way.
Hi, I'm from the Central Bank of Israel, and we are using SDMX only for the modeling of the data, for the metadata and the harmonizations of code lists and the concepts, and also for the dissemination to the users within the bank and on our website. All the dashboards are built on the basis of the modeling and the browser and the API, of course. So no exchange, but metadata from the...
Yep, thank you. Yes, that's right. This is what we see outside of Europe. And it's these new use cases: dissemination, visualization, data and metadata management.
The dashboards are important.
What?
You mentioned the dashboards, that they are...
Yeah, visualization and visualization, yeah.
Yep, sorry, I'm a bit hidden, so I'm standing up. I'm not the tallest. So besides the usual uses like dissemination, we said already, collection, mapping, which we are all using at the BIS, we are also trying, and the objective is to support metadata-driven processes in general. So we are also trying to, okay, maybe it's not exactly how it's intended to be used, but we use a lot, for example, reference metadata to control a process. We use reference metadata for our data catalog. I think that those are a bit, let's say, marginal uses of SDMX. But yeah, the objective is to keep everything in a single metadata repository, and that's the usefulness of trying to put anything into SDMX. Thanks.
Actually, this is very interesting. And metadata-driven processes, I think this would be beyond what the creators of SDMX intended. But I think it could be, yes, it could be a very interesting use case. Maybe we need to discuss it further.
Yeah.
Oh, Edgardo. Okay,
yeah.
Edgardo.
Just a short mention of a use case in a sister organization of the ILO, that is International Social Security Association. They are using SDMX for exchanging disease certificates among the social security institutions of the world.
Which certificates?
Disease certificates.
Disease.
Yes.
Disease.
Exactly. So when somebody passes away, one social security institution has to communicate the others that has information about this person because he has some time ago worked there and is getting a pension, that this person has passed away in this country. And for that reason, they are using SDMX as the protocol. It's a use case of exchange, but not statistical data. It's administrative data.
Yeah, this is, I mean, I think that Daniel Surani, I hope he's here.
He was taking a phone.
Ah, there he is. Because if my memory is correct, it was 2 years. If my memory is correct, it was 2 years ago at the previous SDMX workshop, where Daniel voiced the idea that in principle you could use SDMX for anything that has to do with data.
I'm talking about it this afternoon again. Yes, I'm still convinced it's true.
Well, then you may be interested to know that some international agencies use SDMX to exchange death certificates. I'm not kidding, just ask Edgar. No, this is very interesting, but I don't even know how to put it in there. I'll say beyond statistics. This is very interesting. Yes. I think, okay, we'll go with Angela and then Camille.
Okay, in Banca d'Italia, we are EU, so we just acquire and disseminate data for the international institution in SDMX. But we are service provider for the system of European Central Bank for AnaCredit, and we model data in SDMX 2.1. It's a multi-measure, so we really a little trick, and now we are going to 3.0, and we were just talking with Bank of Luxembourg for microdata adjustments for these microdata. So SDMX can be used also for microdata from primary and secondary reporting.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I'm from Bank of Luxembourg. It was a coincidence. I have a proposal for a name that could be Structured Data Management Experience. But beside that, we use SDMX in Luxembourg, or we're trying to use, we have a project that's called ACID, so Acquisition and Dissemination. So we want to collect the data in SDMX, but also we use, primarily we want to use SDMX for harmonizing our reference data. So we want to have like the harmonized code list that currently they are not. And we are also using the FMR, the free version, that has some limitations, but I think the best tool what we can find in the market right now. And so the main scope is like first to harmonize the code list, and then once we have that, we can move on maybe to the, use the .stat for dissemination and visualization. But our primary goal is like reference data. Thank you.
Excellent. Harmonization and interoperability. Camille? And
yes.
then,
I will try to give also another use case, I hope is not mentioned, maybe, is 2 points. One is to go beyond dissemination. The reporting is to create or to concretize what you call a data management system, data repositories between production and dissemination, because this is the most gap. And another point, and then it will be with good quality, less hand management data or manual data management. Another point is, let's say, that to enable data hub architecture, or let's say data backbone architecture. And one of the use cases that we are planning to implement in some continents in Africa is how to connect ministries with NSO with central bank. So I think we start working, and we hope the next expert meeting group will present you some use case. Thank you.
Data backbone, I really love it. Yes, I really love it. Thanks, Camille. Yes, David. Yes. Oh, sorry. Okay, David, and then Carlos.
Okay, so. Yeah, we also use it for the OECD to develop this corpus of reusable structural metadata. You know, I mean, the purpose is to increase interoperability. I mean, with our old system that was non-SDMX, this was very difficult. But with the new system, which is all SDMX based, you know, .stat, this has been, we've put processes around that, and it's become just part of our normal business processes. But also, we've developed this governance of structural metadata as well, and the business processes around it. And this made its way into the guidelines on the governance of structural metadata. And finally, we actually use SDMX as part of the access control to our data, you know, because we control this through agency schemes, which has also been really useful. Thanks.
Yep, that's very interesting, access control. Yep. Carlos.
Okay.
And then
Thank you, Abdulla. I think that Kamel already all the talk. In Cameroon we use SDMX for data dissemination, and the use case we done is to share data with the IMF in the case of the improved data dissemination, EGG. And we also use SDMX to improve dissemination of SDGs indicators. I think in Cameroon we already developed a national data structure definition for the SDG. One I wanted to.
Yep, thanks. There you go. Dissemination and reporting. I think that Matthias and then Rafael.
Oh, this works. First, I would like to add a little bit to the previous use cases around the data backbone idea. I think the important kind of a little bit missing element there is the lifecycle data management. So more end-to-end lifecycle management, which is really important, not just for the data backbone, but also for metadata-driven users, etc. And the second aspect that is, I don't know to what extent is covered, but I don't think it's enough, is in the data backbones there is a lot of emphasis of understanding the quality and measuring the quality of data products. One very simple example is SIMS standard. And I know the half of SIMS already has, you can generate from SDMX, but the other half, I don't know. Anyway, the quality, measurement of quality and management of quality is also very important. And the last thing, the third thing, is when we go more into the micro data, from metadata management, etc. For microdata, there will be new use cases coming up, a lot related to the research. So the research, microdata research by scientists, etc. So what I see, that is more personal, is more and more relevance of data science methods and data science as a users. I don't know how to put it here at the moment. And there is also, another standards that cover probably that. Anyway, I do believe the data science needs will come more and more, even from the data production lens, because data science is more and more used in data production.
I have, thanks very much, Matthias. And I have a question to the audience. It's a genuine, it's a sincere question, because I don't know the answer, and I'm curious to learn what you think about that. Because a recurring problem that we have seen in official statistics is the sharing of microdata. For obvious reasons, the privacy issues, and everything else that comes with it, all sorts of techniques applied with it. Do you think that SDMX could help there to address at least some of those issues? I don't know the answer because we don't deal with microdata at UNSD, so I've never looked into it. Do you think it could help? Kamir has an answer? No.
Yes, because I came from NSO let's say, landscape or let's say environment, and then I'm working now in a regional level. So for microdata is a big challenge in terms of how to use it as it is, and here it is very difficult, not saying maybe impossible, or it is anonymized microdata. So at least I don't think that SDMX itself, because we are going beyond SDMX. SDMX for me, my point of view, is a way or a modernized way to work. Doesn't resolve the problem or the issue of privacy, maybe our techniques to anonymize, but microdata as it is, for internal use, yes, maybe SDMX can help to, to harmonize the way to work or standardize the way to work, but not the problem of privacy. Thank you.
No, I'm pretty sure that it would resolve those problems, but maybe it can help.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still of the opinion that there is no microdata, right? There's data, and we can describe it with SDMX, and there it can help. And including then having the metadata available, having the documentation available, having at least transparency with, let's say, for instance, reference metadata about what are the access requirements, linking to procedures that you have. It will not solve legal issues. It will not solve kind of issues that you have in your country when you don't want to share the data. But if you want to share it, and if you can share it, then SDMX can help you to facilitate the process. And the second point, I think, where we are currently not yet investigating much, is what is called micro-macro linking. It's like, we talked, I think, yesterday quite a lot in VTL about the value chain, and where you can say, okay, I have my microdata, I have it modeled in SDMX, I can do VTL transformations to show the whole business lineage from the microdata to the indicator. And I think this is also a field we can explore once we have microdata modeled. But with all the rest, like was said before, SDMX is not the right tool. It's a standard for data modeling and data exchange and data processing. It's not a standard for solving legal issues and privacy issues, right?
No, that's for sure. That's for sure. But Kamil actually, yes, Kamil mentioned production to dissemination. I think that, yes, you're okay, maybe a couple of other answers and then we move on because we can't spend too much time.
I agree with what has been said about that the non-disclosure issue is independent on why you describe or store the data. But what I think that will bring a lot of value in using SDMX for microdata is the ability of putting data and metadata together. I mean, today, normally when you distribute microdata, you distribute the file in certain formats, CSV, SPSS, Stata, and then you have in another format, in another document, the metadata, the documentation, maybe in DDI, maybe just in a PDF. So SDMX brings the possibility of having that together. Moreover, for the internal processing, you can have things as powerful as quality metadata attached to each variable, if you want, in your data model. Something that, of course, will not be easy to have the tools to use that. There will be even cultural problems, cultural barriers to break. But I think that, in theory, is very, very powerful having SDMX, data information model, to store and hold and process and then disseminate microdata.
Okay, thanks. Juan and then Rafael, and we move on from that. Oh.
Well, first, for microdata, of course, to collect information is something that you can use it to make reusable instruments, reusable software that you can have to collect any kind of microdata. The problem that I exposed is that there is some kind of gap before creating the indicators, because you need to identify each of the information units. So it can be done, yes, but it must be complemented. The other thing is about data science for, I think is more about AI enable. It can enable to apply AI for your data infrastructure.
Yep. This is what we found. We found the gap between production and dissemination as one of the biggest issues. And it was reflected in the governance review. So it's great to hear the confirmation of that.
Yeah, I would like to zoom out a little bit because what you said, Abdulla, is how can we make SDMX more aware to our management, senior management? And I mean, when I think about this, yeah, what are you using SDMX for? And if I need to answer these questions to my senior management, actually what I find flies very well is that it's actually helping us in implementing data governance. Just in general, implementing data governance. And what I see, there's a lot of discussion among central banks ongoing at the moment to formulate a data strategy where data governance is usually included. And this is really on EXCO level. And you have all these data governance frameworks like DAMA and so on, but actually it's not an implementation. So SDMX is actually the implementation of a data governance framework. And I think with this, maybe we are more successful to get better traction on the senior management side.
On the list, maybe what is missing is data discovery. It can help to discover data, and for this, what I see from, for instance, from the global registry would be to have a registry of data points. For now, the data discovery, you have to know that you are looking data for somewhere. If you have somewhere all the references, and someone can say that as new data points available and put there, it would be available to everyone. Now it's done on the software that we declare each time when we are interested by data. But you have
absolutely. It's an emerging use case, and of course we spent quite a bit of time, very good time, on using SDMX in conjunction with linked open data and other standards. Brian? Brian and then Matthias.
Thank you. Just to look at it maybe from a different perspective, because this is a lot about what are you using SDMX for, and we've seen the shopping list, and I think it's wonderful. But the idea is to see how we can talk to senior management. And if you want to talk to senior management, it's how are we going to derive value from this investment? Because there's a cost, right? And the cost has to deliver more than what you're putting in. I think that everybody that's using SDMX in dissemination, it's fantastic. I would ask that if you had a crappy SDMX dissemination tool or a best-in-class other free open source dissemination tool, which would you choose? And I think what we have is we have a best-in-class open source SDMX dissemination tool, so people end up using SDMX. And it's not anything against SDMX, it's to say that there's a definite value in the free open source tools marketplace that SDMX is providing.
Yeah, if you've seen Glenn nodding next to you, this is not for nothing.
Yeah.
Because he is the one who's pushing for quantification and for a cost-benefit analysis.
I mean, if I'm looking at what I see as the major benefits of SDMX, it's driving innovation, agility, reducing time to market, reducing time from idea to realization, and all of that comes through the metadata-driven systems, metadata-driven processes, the sense of community that comes with joining SDMX, the free open source tools, the evolution that we're seeing with moving towards AI, moving towards microdata, all of that is coming by being part of the standard and using the standard. You would never be able to do that if you're doing it on your own. If everything you were building was bespoke and ad hoc, you would be spending fortunes to try to keep up with this stuff. Being part of the standard and part of the community is what's driving those advantages to the organizations that are using SDMX.
I almost said, Brian, you're preaching to the choir. Then I remembered that you were suggesting how we address the senior management. So thanks very much.
Yeah, another perspective, perhaps. So I think, yeah, it's great to expand the use of SDMX to new use cases, but I think we should also look out what are other standards out there that are becoming more and more important for statistical community. And I think in that relation, SDMX has some sort of another, let's say, edge or benefit. We see more and more on cross-domain type of use cases, or the government data hubs in Canada, and we have in Europe European data spaces, where you start to integrating or sharing, like you mentioned, the data from different domains, so non-statistical data with statistical data for scientific research purposes, for example, and that's maybe where SDMX could play a role in these mapping exercises with other standards. Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you this. We have all seen, we have all heard about the Open Data Initiative. And I think it's a fantastic initiative. But when I went to, I think, is it data.gov.uk, if my memory is correct, and other platforms, many of them based on CCAN, I was extremely frustrated. Because, what was it from? Yes, Minister, I think it was the British TV series. If you want to hide something, just put it into the archive. So there's your archive. Yes, it's all there, but it's impossible to find almost anything that you want. Nothing is cross-referenced. Every data set lives with its own universe. So, if we could bridge SDMX somehow with open data, that would be a huge, a fantastic achievement. So absolutely, yeah. Matt.
Maybe this kind of complements that with my kind of TWG hat on. We are talking with other standards, and one of them was actually wanting to use SDMX as a way to serialize its concepts and code lists, right? Because they're like, we could actually, they have their own data model, right? They exchange data in a way which is not like SDMX, but they see it as a very useful way for the metadata governance, and actually putting things in a registry which then makes it accessible and adhering to the FAIR principles. So they're very keen on this ability to get a persistent URI and accessible and everything in a kind of processable format. But that's purely from the metadata side, so the concepts and the classifications, and then making that available through the SGDS.
Yes, dissemination of metadata. Because when we talk about dissemination, we tend to talk about data, but actually metadata is equally important. And Jens, no, for you, microphone. Thanks, Jens. When we talk about dissemination, we tend to talk about dissemination of data. But dissemination of metadata, yes, it's a use case in itself, and it's a very important one that we shouldn't forget. I'm not aware of anything better than FMR for that purpose. I think we have a few more minutes for discussion, and then we'll go into the Slido. Yeah.
I don't have a use case to add, but I wanted to comment more on the communication side. So you introduced at the beginning that actually the key persons that need to understand the business case are the senior management in the different organizations. So I wonder how we can actually get better access to these. So should in the SDMX Global Conference be a specific session for senior management where the business cases, real implementations are presented to them, where they understand what other organizations have done, where they see the practical outcomes of this. And so, where we really actually try now to get access to these people. And maybe this might need to come directly from the secretariat, from the sponsors, because of course these are high-level people. So, but maybe there would be a way of reflecting on rather than asking us to go to our management, trying to to communicate directly to them.
Yeah, this is something. I mean, every time, honestly, after every global conference, I feel like I wish we'd done more to bring senior management in. And yeah, this is an excellent, this is an excellent idea. Luca.
No, just to complement what Jens just mentioned, because I think it's a very good idea. Every global conference, we always have a session which is about local implementations, country implementations, where we have different people presenting what they did. And unfortunately, I always find it one of the most difficult sessions to follow, because there isn't necessarily a logic, obviously, in the different sequence of implementations. It's very localized, let's say. There's implementations that are quite similar, often kind of repeated, and after the second or third, the presenter can be very good, but it kind of becomes all the same. And maybe the next global conference, if we have, through the business case work, kind of a list of use cases, we could structure in a way that we have one example for each use case, right? And structure it that way, and that way also for senior management, it's much more interesting. I mean, they say, okay, well, I see the list of use cases, I see one example for each. The session itself is a bit more lively and diverse, and with a clearer purpose, I would say. So I think what Jens mentioned makes perfect sense, and it can be accommodated by simply reshuffling a bit these kind of sessions we've had in the past anyway.
Yes, and something else which I'm voicing to the SDMX Secretariat members who are here is we need to carefully look at the invitation to the next global conference, and we need to make sure that these aspects are reflected there. Because otherwise they will think that they are going to send a couple of programmers to the conference. No, that's not sufficient. As the SDMX Experts Workshop, yes, this is for the experts, but the global conference, it's not just for the experts.
Yeah, I would like just to add to what Luca said, because it's very hard to convince a senior manager to come to SDMX conference. I don't know how to convince him. But at least I think what we'll be happy to share with the management is some report and, for example, some KPIs saying that how long did it take to implement something, how much did it save, did it increase the visibility and interoperability. So, something that you can talk to these people, because what they want to know what is the value. So, they will not come for 1 week there, so at least if they can connect one session where it's really directed to the management, might be interesting. But also we have to speak their language. We are doing this to save money and what that brings. Thank you.
Yeah, that goes into these proposals, and we've mentioned the return on investment. Yes, we intend to quantify the benefits of SDMX. We do intend to create those indicators. Glenn has been pushing very strongly for that. It's hard. I don't know if this is going to be completed before next year's global conference, but if it's there, we'll try.
Just to complete, you don't have to create global KPIs. Just saying that what Luca said, if there is a presentation from an organization to come with saying that it took us to implement this in 6 months, 5 people, and we maybe costed this and we saved maybe less. So at least to have a use case, but it's also quantified, so that will be easier to understand. Thanks.
Abdulla, I don't know how possible it is, but using not just the global conference as a channel, the statistical commission, the heads of the statistical office meets there, and that's it. They are already there, so you can have the promotion showing them the use case there. It's not.
Thanks, Juan. Okay, Jonathan first.
Yeah, I agree with Juan. We've got to go to them rather than make them come to us, because that's not going to happen. We had a really good event in Paris as a side event for our statistics committee, where we had all the heads of NSOs, of OECD NSOs come. Mathias was there, actually. He sort of presented as well. And it was chaired by the head of the Finnish stats agency, who was wondering why they were doing their own thing, you know. So they will wake up to it once we explain it to them in their terms, in their place. So, yeah.
Yes, and of course this was one of those opportunities where we work together, UN and OECD, to bring up the awareness and to start working to destroy the misperceptions about SDMX, which we find exist. Yeah.
Okay, so the point I want to add to is there is a point about deriving value from investment, but I'm thinking about investment from personal investment of your time. If there was a defined career path for somebody with SDMX knowledge, that does encourage a lot more people to be engaged in that, knowing that, well, if I am at this expertise level, I can become this. So that on its own is one point I want to add.
Oh, this is something I strongly support. No, but seriously, after the last global conference in Bahrain, I said it. I don't remember if I said it publicly from the podium or privately. I think it was privately, but I'm sure that there are witnesses in this room. The guys, I expect that the demand for SDMX experts is going to skyrocket in the next few months, not years, months. And this is exactly what I've seen since the beginning of this year. This has happened already. But there are other discussions that we hold about, especially, I think it was here, right? About SDMX certification programs. Yep, it's very, very relevant, of course. Well, we only have a couple of minutes left. And I'm seeing a couple of countries conspicuous by their absence from the discussion. I will not name them at first. So maybe they will step forward and would like to say something. I'm talking about the countries and not international agencies. So, countries that haven't spoken, this is your chance to speak now before I call you.
I'm from Stats Canada, so reason why I'm not really saying anything is because everything's been pretty much covered in many ways. And I don't see any special case why we're using SDMX. I find the conversation really interesting about upper management because it's one of our biggest challenge, even though we're making progress as far as pushing the agenda for SDMX. Obviously, in the scope of the global conference, I think you need to think if you want to get upper management, and I see that you're saying that we need to go to upper management, not wait for them to come to us. But if you do something at the global conference, I think it's been said, but think of it as an elevator sales pitch. It can be 5 days, it can even be 3 hours for upper management. Sometimes you may need to do something, needs to be an hour if we can convince our upper management to free their time for an hour. Besides that, pretty much everything has been said as far as we have .stats. So it's for dissemination, data visualization, reporting, collection of data as well that we're looking into building some kind of an ingestion portal right now. I mean, using some validation so that we don't need to to do that validation of data, but it's coming and gets validated on the spot and makes its way to the platform. We have all kinds, I mean, few data hubs right now do a harmonization, so we use it for harmonization as well. So as I'm saying, I mean, there's not much, I mean, I have to say about that. Nothing new. It's been pretty much covered.
No, thanks very much, because you've done two really important things. One is you reinforced what has been said, and it's very important because we're always looking for support from our member states, right? So thanks very much. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, you stood up, you went over the edge, and you saved other countries from disgrace of being... Anyway, last call, last very final comment, because we are almost at lunchtime. Any further comments? It's from countries. If you are an international agency, don't even bother standing up. Countries, yes.
I'm from Banca d'Italia, and we use also SDMX to acquire data from international organizations via web services. And for us, it's very important because we use this data in institutional process to directly in our Stata software, and so it's very important that the international organization maintain this web service activity. And okay, sometimes we have problem with the message that arrive, and also is not aligned with the global DLSD or codes. So for us, it's very important because we use this data in our process internally.
Yeah, thanks very much. And unfortunately, I wish we could spend more time on that, because something which I pretty much had in mind was data exchange at national level and data collection by national agencies. Because the thing is that whenever you, I mean, I've done a lot of capacity building, and when countries, they come and they learn about SDMX, the first thing that they want to do is national data exchange. They want to get data from national ministries. And I'm kind of, yes, I smile politely and I try to sort of tell them, well, curb your enthusiasm, because it's really hard. And until recently, we didn't even have any successful examples, but now we do. And it's very successful. In Thailand, they figured it out. So I think that this is a hugely important upcoming use case. Okay, and now we need to run our Slido with Luca's help.
There we go.
All right. So the first question, thanks very much, Luca. The first question is pretty straightforward. What your office has used SDMX for? We're getting there, and it's great to see that collecting data is actually fairly high while it's going down. Now it's up again.
I need to answer as well.
Yeah, I think I should vote myself, of course. All right. 60 is the magic number. Yes. Yay. All right, we can move on.
Next one.
Yes. So, this is a two-choice question. You can. These are the use cases for SDMX, and it's the same use cases. You need to check the two which you feel are most important to your organization. Yeah, it's a pretty even distribution. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Thanks very much. Let's go on. So, where do you think your organization should urgently invest when it comes to SDMX? Almost there, 57, 58, 59. We need one, just one. We know you are there. Well, you completed previous answers. Now please complete this one. Nobody cares. All right. No, I voted. Yay. Yeah! Let's go.
Next one?
Yes, please. We'll discuss the results together at the end. All right. Now, this next topic is about interoperability and harmonization. And it's about resources that your office has already been putting into, the effort that your office has already been spending on harmonization and interoperability. Please be honest. The answer is anonymous, and it's not about your own preferences, it's about your office's preferences as you see them. Great. We have the magic number. And I believe the final answer question.
There we go.
And finally, you've expressed your view about what your office has already been doing. And this next question is about what your office should be doing. So in the future, and I'm not talking about 10 years from now, I'm talking about, let's say, 10 months from now, or a couple of years. Do you believe that the office should put more effort into the harmonization of data that it disseminates? I think that the senior management, which has repeatedly been mentioned in the last hour, would be interested to know the results of this poll. All right, let's give it another 30 seconds, then we close the poll and we'll look at the results. All right, we're done. Luca, could you please close the polls and then we'll go over the results.
Yes, I mean. So you want to start with the first one, I guess?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So, what your office has been using SDMX for. Reporting comes up first, which means that we are overweight international organizations and OECD region countries. But it's great that dissemination is coming up close to reporting. That's an important one. Collecting data from other organizations. This is higher than I would expect. I would expect lower because at this time it primarily applies to international organizations. So 60% is not bad. This is great. Data and metadata management with SDMX. That's really very interesting. You know, it's great to see such a high result. I was not expecting that. And other 12%, well, I hope that we have your comments on the chart, but if not, then you're free to add them. Let's go. Where has it been most useful? It's really, really interesting, and it's really great that data and metadata management has come up so strongly. It means, and this is basically a hidden gem. It's something which is not recognized in the current business case, but which is happening already, which is taking place already. Dissemination, again, look, when you talk about what your office is doing, reporting is second. But when you talk about what's most useful, reporting is only third. And this is, again, this is great. This is recognition that the other use cases than reporting are extremely important. And this is, again, higher than I would expect. Because I think that the audience is overweight with international organizations, to be honest. Let's go on. So, again, data and metadata management, great to see that so many people, majority of the audience, like half the people in the audience believe that this is where the investment into SDMX, the use of SDMX needs to urgently increase. It is also curious that the emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence, are given higher priority than the plain old use case, well, the older use case of disseminating data to the public. Remember the X in SDMX? It's number 4. And 5. So this is again really interesting that it's not the traditional use case for SDMX where investment should be made. Let's go on. All right. the resources that your office is putting into harmonization, basically the question is, are they adequate or not? And I think that it's really interesting to see that almost half people said that this is, that their offices are, it is basically on the agenda in their offices, but it's not at the top of the agenda. And a third of the people said that it's actually not even on the agenda at all. So I'm not sure how to think about these results, but the fact that a total of 66% said that, so 2/3 said that harmonization is a medium or high priority, that's not bad. That's not bad. So I think that, how shall I say, people recognize the importance, at least people in this room recognize the importance of harmonization and interoperability. And last but not least, again, this is great. It's great that there is a widespread, practically, 3/4 of the participants believe that more investment is needed into harmonization. And this is, again, this is important because it's not, we can't say that the value of harmonization is universally recognized. It's talked about in tons of documents, in tons of policy documents, but this is not something that we always see on the ground. So this recognition, it's great. All right, we are 3 minutes over time, but then we started 5 minutes early, so Luca, please don't blame me. And thanks very much. I think we've had a really, really great and interesting session, and I got the engagement I hoped for. So again, thanks very much.
Before you go off to lunch, I have an organizational announcement. So I've been informed that we have a problem. You may remember that on Monday, the first thing we did was we took a picture. And I've been informed that we're not pleased with the results of that picture. You were not smiling enough, something like that, okay? So we need to fix that, which means now you go off to lunch, and then we are going to go into the Emma room, right? Downstairs, which is right next to where we have lunch, at around 2 o'clock. We take a nice picture together where we're all smiling this time, and then we come back for the last session of the day, okay? All right, let's go.